Sure. Well, that being said, let's definitely open with a word of prayer. I know that I could present this from my own strength, but that's not what we do when we are believers in Christ. So, Father, thank you this evening. Thank you for the opportunity to share with these men and women of God who will be receiving the messages that I have been given from you, Lord, concerning our body, mind, soul, and spirit. Be with me, Lord. And as I pray each and every time I present or teach or preach, let the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. Lord, you are my strength, my rock, and my redeemer. It is in your precious, sweet, and but very strong name I pray. Amen. Amen. All right, so let's go to this next slide. I found this quote and I thought it was so good. It's by a woman named Tia Walker, and it just simply says, caregiving often calls us to lean into love we didn't know was possible. I don't care how much you love your loved one. Once you are in the place of caregiving, it expands, it enlarges, it suddenly crosses bounds that you didn't even know were there. And it's not just about the sacrifice, strain, and strength that it is required for compassionate caregiving. It all boils down to the fact that there's sometimes in all of our relationships some untapped territory, something that suddenly says, this is going to call me higher. This is going to cause me to have to expand and stretch in my love and care for people. And I actually think that that's a good thing. It may be coming from a poor or an unfavorable circumstance, but it actually, in the end, works in our favor. It makes us just better people. And I don't know about you, but sometimes when I realize I'm made of more, it just creates this amazing opportunity for me to be a witness in other ways behind the scenes. And so we're going to actually get to that. So the next slide, I want to just walk us through what our workshop goals are. And that is just simply to understand the real cost of caregiving. We're going to talk about all the ways that it costs us and then explore unique experiences. I do have a snippet about African American caregivers. I think it's important, whether or not you're an African American or not, to understand the plight of what is actually happening. And then the last one is to identify practical and spiritual support tools. I don't like attending a webinar and I just am told what to do and not how to do it or how I can create or implement some actionable items. So that's what I want to leave with you all today. Next slide. Just as a quick icebreaker here, who are you caring for? And what has your journey taught you about yourself? And as women, especially, I think there's primarily women on here, especially as women, we do it often, except we do it not from the highest level of proficiency. And what's amazing is we pull it off, right? People don't even know. And I was speaking about this not too long ago. Women have this kind of, I don't even want to say it's a superpower because I don't want to make it so honorific, but we have a way about getting things done where it can look like it's easy. But on the inside, we are just exhausted.
Yes, I agree with you.
And I say that as a preacher, as a worshiper, as a believer, as someone who loves the Lord. And, I stay, very equipped with feeding my soul and making sure I'm resting and all these things. And even with all of that discipline, there are days where I just think I am out of energy. I'm depleted. I'm done. And so even from pouring from an empty cup, there can be times where people don't know you're empty, right? They don't know you're empty. So let's go to the next slide. What is caregiving? I know it's really a basic kind of understanding. And that is just, again, providing physical, emotional, financial, and or spiritual support. And what we know also is that it is often unpaid and unseen labor. Invisible labor is one of the most taxing things for men and women, but especially women caregivers. And it includes, of course, caregiving includes medical care, emotional support, and then what our sister Roxanne just mentioned, advocacy. You're often the person that has to step in, whether or not you're the power of attorney, whether or not you're the health proxy, whether or not you're the oldest or not, somehow you are going to be put in a position to have to advocate. You will have to advocate. And most likely it will be from a place where it's volunteered on your part, or it's just an obligation. And I don't want to use that word to be offensive. I mean, though, that sometimes, and many of you can probably attest to this, is that sometimes you are the only person that the family is looking to, or that your spouse is looking to, or that your child is looking to, or that a sibling or a loved one is looking to, not necessarily because you are the only option, but because you are their first option. And as we all know, most people, when they ask of us to do something on this magnitude, it is because they already know you're in for the long haul. It's going to be taxing, and it's going to include every bit of those things: financial, physical, emotional, spiritual, medical, and it's going to weigh on us. And again, next slide. The reality here, though, I want to bring us into some things. If you have some questions, definitely put them in the chat. The reality is of caregiving in America is that there are over 63 million caregivers in the United States. Many provide 20 to 30 plus hours a week of care. And as I mentioned, not just often, the majority of that 63 million are unpaid. They're stepping in. You all are, we're filling in the gaps. We're interceding. We are intervening in cases because either there's not a financial there's a financial need for maybe a health aid or some kind of other person that needs to step in, and the resources are not there. So the tax is on someone that's in the home or that needs to come to the home, but again, unpaid. That's a lot of people, 63 million caregivers in the United States. And anyone want to say something?
I just put in the chat, not only is this work unpaid, and when I first heard that, I thought, well, I shouldn't get paid to take care of my husband or my loved one. That seems weird, like to say, oh, it's unpaid. Yeah, it's unpaid. But the truth of the matter is we're subsidizing a healthcare system that doesn't work well. It hasn't worked well for a really long time.
That's what it is.
If we weren't doing what we have to do, then our loved ones would be in trouble. And what really concerns me about this, and why I do so much advocacy work, is because that's the same care that my husband needed, I may need one day. And I want systems and resources in place in case I need support, so that I don't become a burden to my children.
I agree. It is you touched on it. It is we are subsidizing for the government and for the systematic structures that are in place, because if they don't put it in place, it doesn't erase the need. There's still a need. There's still someone that is requiring that type of care. So next slide. Again, the reality of caregiving in America as of 2020 is what it says here. As of 2020, 24% more Americans are caring for more than one person. So now, and I think maybe Roxanne or someone mentioned caring for not a parent, but plural, parents. They're caring for more than one person. And then also, Sister Janine, you mentioned as well, listen, if there's one parent that is ill, then what happens to the other parent? Even if they're quote unquote well and physically capable of doing some things, now you're caring for one person and the other person, because more than likely they were working in tandem. If they're married and if they're together, they're sharing the load, or they're carrying one another's burdens in other ways, and then also physically until they can't. So now you have the burden of caring for not one person but two people. And since 2020, that increased 24%. And then today's family caregivers are 61% women, 39% men. And 60% of family caregivers are employed full or part-time somewhere else. So we just read that there's an additional caregiving requires 20 to 30 plus hours a week. But now it's saying 60% of that 63 million, they have their own full-time job, which is probably 40 hours a week plus. That's a lot. And does anyone want to even just jump in and kind of speak to that? Because caregiving is a full-time job. but 60% have a full-time job that may be completely unrelated, more than likely, probably not even in the medical field, but they have to then shift and reorient and have to do something completely different for 40 hours of the week and then have to suddenly put on their caregiver hat.
Well, there's a new study out, 2024 study, I think it was. Maybe Dorinda can share those numbers.
Just,
But it's
yeah,
definitely higher. So
she
just
just
just know that the numbers are all higher now.
she just put in the chat, in Maryland, family and informal caregivers provide 24 billion, wow, dollars worth of labor each year, according to the most recent AARP report. That's astounding.
And so you might be on this call
Wow.
thinking, I'm a caregiver, I already know some of this, but let me tell you why it's really important for us to get this in our minds, because there are a lot of us, and you're not alone. There are a lot of us who've either been a caregiver or going to be a caregiver or were a caregiver, like myself. And we need to work together to
Yeah.
make it better if it's going to ever get better. I mean, the people who have access to the purse strings don't always have our experience, so they don't know what we need. If we don't tell them, they
Mhm.
won't make it. They won't make any changes. And not only at in the in politics does it matter, but in our local communities, in our churches. That's why
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that Reverend Joyce created this presentation. It's important for us to identify as caregivers, so we reach out for resources. So you're on this call because you know you're a caregiver. But for about 15 years, I didn't know I was a caregiver. I was just a wife who was taking care of my husband. I didn't
Wow.
read a book. I didn't
Wow.
go to a support group. I didn't
Wow.
go anywhere for help. I was just trying to figure it all out. So take these facts and figures with
Yeah.
you when you
Yeah.
leave this call today. Share them with your pastor, your employer, everybody you
Absolutely.
can, and let them know this is a public health issue. It's going to get worse if we don't do something about it. And now I'm going to get off my soapbox.
Absolutely. Next slide, because what we do want to highlight again, I'm just, again, we lead from who we are. And as an African American woman, I want to just highlight actually that the African American caregivers statistics are very different. So we make up 13% of caregivers in the United States. We just mentioned that there's 63 million caregivers in the United States. 13% of that is 8 million. So we make up 8 million of that. And so, because of that, we're more likely to be in high intensity caregiving roles. About 55% of the cases and situations where we're caregiving are high intensity caregiving roles. What does that mean? That means that we're not caregiving for causes or cases that are minute or that are minor or that just involve some lower level kind of interaction. It's things like terminal illnesses, as someone mentioned, Sister Beverly talking about her husband in hospice. It's really, by the time there's actually intensive care in that way, it's almost like end of life or something that has to tax us very much, a little more than other races. We're more likely to care for individuals again with complex medical needs, and we're more likely to live with care recipients. African Americans typically live with the person they're caregiving. So again, some others visit maybe a nursing home or a facility, and by and large, we are taking care of people in the home, and that also includes 13% of those caregivers have children at home, or over half of them that 13% have children at home. That sandwich generation. What is applicable to everyone, next slide, is the sacrifice. Let's start with that, the sacrifice. Here's what I know is that caregivers often give from a place of love, duty, and cultural expectation, especially in the African American community, which means, again, 20, 30 plus hours a week. It also includes a financial strain. Many times, and this is not just indigenous to African Americans, career interruptions, personal health decline. The career interruptions is huge because most of the time you have to sacrifice something that has to do with your job. Again, 20 to 30 hours caring for someone, and then you also have a full-time job. More than likely, that's going to cause some career interruptions, taking people to appointments, using your PTO, having to sacrifice some other things. So there's a weight and a weightiness there that that again, that invisible labor, that unseen sacrifice, the unpaid sacrifice, the feeling of thinking. I think someone mentioned it. Man, what is, not so much what is all of this for, because I don't want to do it, but where's the help? And the reality is, again, part of the sacrifices, typically there's not an equal distribution of contribution and help from other family members. I'm one of 15 children. I tell people all the time, I have 12 brothers and 2 sisters, all from the same 2 parents. But when my father fell ill a few years back, it was just a handful of us that was able to really rally around. And it's not even to say anything negative about my other siblings, but that's just what happens. And many times there's usually just a singular child that has to step up, or just one person in the family that steps up, even if it is an extended family member like an aunt or an uncle or someone else. And then there's that personal health decline. The physical sacrifice that we make is that we have to remember to put on our own mask first, to say, okay, I want to help. I'm going to help. I will help. I will step up, whether it's out of love, duty, or expectation, but I have to put my mask on first. As they say when you get on board a plane, listen, even before you help your child or someone else, if you don't have oxygen, you're of no good. You're of no use to anyone else, and it won't last, and it won't be beneficial for you. Someone said in the chat, I learned about burnout when I was high risk pregnancy, working in memory care. My son came 4 weeks healthy, early but healthy. Yeah, yeah. Tiffany mentioned, I assist in running an organization for children and adults with disabilities. When I attend events, she meets so many families who are caregivers. Our organization educates them on services we provide. A lot of those families tell me how tired they are and how difficult it is for them to work and care for their loved ones. It's a real thing, people. And this is why I also tell people, be kind. Just be kind to people. You don't know what they're dealing with. You don't know what they're carrying. You might even see what they're carrying and see the load, but you have no idea that they're actually probably carrying it alone, or perhaps have very little, if not no help at all. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the sacrifice. I can't do a deep dive into the sacrifice, strain, and strengths of all of these things, but I just want to give you some nuggets. And then let's go to the next slide, the strain. So again, we talked about just that strain, the physical. Someone mentioned burnout already, fatigue, chronic pain on your body. Sometimes caring for someone may require picking them up and physically having to transport them from the bed to a chair, or helping them from a wheelchair to somewhere else. That fatigue, chronic pain, the emotional toll it can take on someone, stress, anxiety, burnout, exhaustion, just that constant feeling of being depleted. Then there's social. Caregiving kind of makes you isolated. If you're working a 40-hour job and helping someone 20 plus hours a week, when do you have time to even really engage and socialize and be a part of, either your peer groups or even, church events and activities and extracurricular things? It makes you feel isolated, and therefore it kind of creates just kind of a lack of support, perhaps not even from the people, but from you. You can only do so much. And then there's the economical, those systematic challenges we talked about, even being the subsidiary of all of these things that are not really in place, but we're having to step up and fill in those holes. Limited access to resources, even cultural barriers, things that, in certain cultures, they're multi-generational. So they live together all their lives. Which means they have to care for each other all their lives. There's some races and some ethnicities, they would never, put their elderly or older adults into a facility or anything. That's just not their way. So caregiving is just cultural. That's coming with the package. And a lot of times there's not things economically that are set up for that. Keeping up with the chat room too. Just want to see. Anyone else want to?
Pastor Joyce.
Yes.
I just wanted to speak to that point because I said I leave the house at 6:30, come back home about 7 or 8, depending on the day, p.m. And like much of the time, of course, my dad is here by himself. Luckily, the kids, come and go. Somebody's always home, but it does take a toll on the person, like very overwhelming, and trying to figure out how to balance all of the things, personal, dealing with them in schedules, and trying to figure out how to still maybe even have time and not feel guilty for it.
There it is right there. That care guilt is for real. That is a real thing, because if you can't make it to every appointment, if you don't get to make it to every important procedure, if you're not able to, there's that care guilt. But then even with the best made schedule and plans, there are things that you will miss, and we have to give ourselves grace. We have to. There's sometimes where, again, most of these households, most of these women, that 63 million, their mothers, their wives, their careers are at stake. There's other things that you have to consider, and the sacrifice and strain of those things can be burdensome. And we're going to now talk about even certain strengths. No matter how much I did, I felt guilty. Absolutely, she said. Theresa said, I accepted what it was just part of the job. Absolutely. Years ago, I think I want to say the reporter's name is it Nora McDonald? She's on what, and she gave a great example of how she herself was able to balance and prioritize urgency over importance over urgency. And she gave the analogy of juggling balls. And she said, as you're just kind of thinking of a juggler that's juggling balls, she said, I had to determine which balls were rubber and which were glass. I see Pat, my sister, my big sister, Pastor Audrey's on here. That'll preach, won't it? You got to figure out which ball is glass and which ones are rubber. There's some glass balls that you just don't want to drop, of course, because it doesn't necessarily mean things will shatter and your relationships are over and all is, lost. No, it doesn't mean that. But it's just weighing the magnitude of which of the impact of not being able to juggle everything in the air. Rubber balls sometimes are just saying, did I forget something? Did I miss something? That's one thing. Glass is more like, making sure we're on top of our own health and wellness, making sure that we're where we need to be, and then some other things. And we can't tell each other what the glass ball is for another person. What may be a glass ball for you may be a rubber ball for me. What may be a rubber ball for me may be a glass ball for you. And so part of that is looking at what it really means to be able to I guess, in essence, find a balance. Let's go to the strengths. The strength, and that is it again. These strengths are not necessarily required. That next slide, Sister. Yep. But they're commonly expected, and this doesn't have anything to do again with race. This is just saying what sometimes is expected. The strength to be a compassionate caregiver comes from having strong family-centered values. Most people that have strong family-centered values, it is the expectation that if someone does get sick, if they're ill, if they need care, that someone in the family will step up to the plate. Also, if there's a deep sense of there's that deep sense of responsibility, and I want to say legacy. It's like, caring for people isn't just about leaning into the responsibility. It's the legacy of care. It's the consistency of care that most people want to continue to provide, if nothing else, to be an example and a witness to other generations and maybe younger eyes that are watching. And like Theresa said, you know what? Hey, one day I might need a caregiver. I may need someone to care for me. I may need someone to care for me. And then caregiving is seen as, honor, reciprocity. These are my parents. They loved me. They cared for me. They took care of me. They put me through college. They sacrificed for me. They had their own strains. They made it happen for me. How dare I just say, well, let's just call some stranger in or whatever. And again, not guilt, but just reciprocity, being able to, to have a different mindset about it, not guilt, not obligation, nothing obligatory, but something that just says, hey, I owe it. I owe them. I owe this person, but again, not because of pressure and something horrible, but again, honor and love. And then most of the time, there's that higher reliance. The strength of a caregiver that's compassionate is that they have a high reliance on faith and religion, their church community, i.e., even care circles. They've identified the fact that they need something outside of themselves. And now that they have agreed or availed themselves to do this, you all have availed yourself to do it, then it comes with a price, it comes with a cost. And there's no area in your life that isn't affected. Not one. Not one. Relationally, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, financially. There's not one there's not one area. And what we often try to do is compartmentalize and say, well, this isn't affected. This won't matter. And I have found very few times where not just everything has to make some kind of adjustment or a shift. And let's get into even just the mental health. I think there's a couple people on here that are into that definitely have background in mental health. I'm not sure if she's on or not. I know that Clarice Bynum, as well as one of her coworkers, Alex Workman. Let's talk about the hidden cost. That next slide of even mental health, and that has to do with caregiving, leading to things like depression, emotional exhaustion, feeling that they've reached their limit. Yet this is the thing, in caregiving, many people do not seek help. Why? Because they normalize how they feel. They normalize suffering. Here's what I know: strength does not mean absence of struggle. It doesn't mean absence of struggle. All those strengths we were talking about, and being reliable, dependable, being faithful, committed, dedicated, showing up, that doesn't eliminate the struggle. That doesn't eliminate the fact that there is a strain there and that there is a pressing that has to happen, especially when it is someone that is uniquely close, a spouse or a parent. And it doesn't. And oftentimes, I want someone to talk about the mental weight that it weighs on you, because with so much interaction, I say it's a hidden cost. But how have you all been able to maintain or manage being able to not let it show with the person that you're giving care to, so that they don't feel, for lack of a better word, so that they don't feel bad, so that they're not feeling like, oh man, this is costing that person too much. How have you all been able to maintain that without the person that you're caring for seeing it in such kind of full-blown real time? Because again, we started off with saying, caregiving often calls us to lean into love we didn't know was possible. Part of that love will include, not always, but as Sister Virginia was so kind to share, it will include that tension that can be there when relationships aren't really where they needed to be or what you wanted them to be. And what do you do when that happens? When someone that you don't have a great relationship with or a great connection with suddenly needs you to be a caregiver? That's huge.
Anything else. But honestly, when I just began to pray and ask God for more compassion, that it really, really wasn't about me, that his grace really was sufficient right here. I mean, the scriptures had to become real in this situation and circumstance. And then, of course, having people that you can just share with, and not the guilt of, because, the guilt would be like, oh my gosh, I can't go on vacation. If I have vacation time, I need to be with one or the other, of them. But just being able to know that it is an honor to be able to care for them right now, that God chose you. It could have been anybody else. Yeah. And sometimes other people just aren't equipped to do it.
I thoroughly agree with that last sentence. I want to backtrack. Even when I mentioned, and again, I could speak for myself, the
Mhm.
other siblings that may not have stepped up so much that I
Mhm.
thought maybe would have or should have, all the things.
Right.
Capacity is an issue for a lot of people. And as I mentioned, I have 12 brothers. And I remember having a conversation with one of my brothers. And of course, at the time I lived in New York, I would fly back to Indiana
Mhm.
as often
Mhm.
as I could. And I noticed that I asked my father, I was like, Daddy, has so and so been here or so and so? And he would say, No, no, but that's okay. And I thought to myself, of course, I'm mad now. I'm like that,
Oh, I'm
like,
absolutely, absolutely.
no, what's happening here? And it was so sweet. And he said, Joyce, um, I don't think I can take looking at him like that.
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
said, well, that's your
And I
dad.
can, right?
Right. But I realized that my brothers have a totally different uh, um, depiction
Hmm.
and history with him. So honestly, my parents had me late in life, and by the time I was born and growing up, I kind of always sensed that they were not feeble, but that they had issues. But my brothers, their memory, their history is this burly man running after them and chasing them with the football or running through the park and having these moments. And that comes with a different set of mindset and fragility.
Hmm. But you know what, Pastor Joyce, also, here's the other thing for this season. And when I realized that for this season, this
Uh-huh.
was the call. For
Yeah,
this
yeah,
season, this
yeah,
is the call.
yeah,
And when we
yeah.
realized that, and I think someone else said it earlier, but it also healed some mommy wounds. I mean, it did. The thing, my mom taught us how to suffer well. I mean, all of these
Yeah,
things
yeah,
happen.
yeah. That's a
But for
phrase I just
us,
heard recently, suffering
yeah,
well. And I'm gonna get
suffering well. But for us mentally, I realized if I did not have scripture, if I didn't have the Lord, if I didn't trust
Mhm,
God,
mhm.
right here for this season, I just
Yeah,
wouldn't. I
no,
wouldn't have
no,
made it.
no, no. What I will say is, even though we have a big family, and from time to time, you know, toward the end, especially, my dad would ask me about certain siblings that I had, and that kind of stung a little because I realized he's wanting, to see all of them as often as he can. But then there were times where he would ask me, he would say, "You're here again. Oh, I know that you and your husband, you and Pastor Jimmy have other things and so many other things." And I realized the best thing I could do, and it came to me one time when I was actually on the plane going back to New York. And I said, okay, from now on, this is what I'm going to tell him. And it was just, and then I know it was inspired by the Holy Spirit. The Lord showed me to say these 7 words. This is where I want to be. This is where I want to be. And I think that tends to absolve anything in their minds. Like, I know it's costing them work, and I know that they have kids, or I know that they have ministries, and I know that they have things to do, and and honestly, those 7 words I want to leave with you all as well, to say and use when it pertains to any interaction, any relationship things. It just works. It disarms the feeling of someone feeling guilty about your presence and your help, but then it also disarms the enemy to make it feel like, you could be somewhere else, or this you could be doing, or even especially when there's tension, you know, uh, well, do they deserve it? Sister Virginia, it doesn't matter. This is where I want to be. Did they earn it? This is where I want to be. Do they value you? Do the other siblings and the other families? This is where I want to be. Are you getting paid? This is where I want to be. Are you getting recognized and honored by your family for the sacrifices, the strain, and all the strength that you're exhibiting? This is where I want to be. Sister Dorinda, you have your hand up.
What a joy to be here and listen. And I'm sorry for coming in late.
Fine.
Thank God I get little reminders because I would have
Right.
completely forgotten altogether. So thank you, Teresa. Um, Hearing you say this is where I want to be. If each one of us could help each other
Mm-hmm.
learn that that is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
And that starts with us being able to authentically say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that guilt, that shame, that obligation, fear, obligation, and guilt causes fog.
It does. It does.
But we are we're not taught that, our life experience. I don't care who you are, for the most part, you haven't been taught that it's about being authentic. And once you get past it, because I had major issues with my father throughout my lifetime for many reasons. But once I got to a place where we were good with each other, when I was with him, I was truly with him. And I was the one who sang him home when he transitioned.
There you go.
From this space to the next.
Yeah.
And it was because I wanted to be there.
This is where I want to be.
Yeah. So thank you.
I think it's powerful because I think is someone raising their hand. I think it's powerful because too, it not only disarms the enemy, it reminds us that out of all the other options, yes, there may be others that need to, do their part, pull their own weight. It reminds us that God has used us very intimately, intentionally, and intrinsically to be present for people in such a time as this. I don't see Clarice's hand up. I do see E.M. Thomas.
That's Ernestine Thomas.
Dr. Ernestine?
Hi, good evening, everyone. I just wanted to mention really quickly is that I struggle a little bit with the title caregiver, because that's why a number of people who aren't in those stats that you mentioned are not accounted for. Because when they think of caregiving, they think of the professional caregiver in the scrubs and all of that. And that's not necessarily the case. Some caregivers have different roles. And that's one thing that I had to accept when I was taking care of my parents with my sister, is that she was not a hands-on person.
Yeah.
Like I was. She was the one that handled the business part. And I think as family, when we recognize that everyone have different gifts and talents, it makes it easier on the entire family. And we let that person do what they can do according to what their gifts and talents could be. Some may be finances, some may be phone calling, some may be doing that. But when you all put it together, caregiving affects the whole family. It kind of rounds things out and makes it easier on not only you, the hands-on one, but also the person that you're caring for.
This is absolutely on point. In fact, I had already pulled up some information that I knew I was going to kind of just interject here, and that's very true. Volunteer caregivers, especially, are, for one, not included in familial planning, but also in society's policies. And volunteer caregivers, we kind of fall into this ambiguous gray area, this gap. And even though we're carrying real responsibilities, the emotional weight, many times the financial burden, many policies are built around those formal professional positions, as you mentioned, in terms of like paid aides and things like that, while family members, even in are not even included in legally recognized roles. And as a result, they're often overlooked. We're often overlooked in terms of even like legal protection, liability coverage, decision-making authority, financial support, as we mentioned before, access even to resources, respite, opportunities, and then also just overall recognition in the healthcare system, being included in healthcare planning and communication. Very few times you really have to do, as we mentioned at the front end of this, the advocacy work is working with social workers, working with patient relations, and things of that nature. Thank you so much, Dr. Ernestine. And then I think the last thing on that slide before that we were talking about the hidden cost of mental health is that caregiving is not meant to be done alone. It is not meant to be done alone. It takes a village still, not just to raise a child, but to care for people in the home. I don't know if we have that slide up, Teresa.
I can bring it back.
Yep, the hidden cost of mental health. Caregiving is not meant to be done alone. So if there is the gap with maybe family contributions and other people in your unit that is stepping up, is not stepping up, there are still some resources, and we're going to get to that. So the next slide. We're moving right along. We just have a few other things to cover. The role of faith, as we mentioned, many of you said it, and it bears repeating. Faith is not just a coping mechanism, but it provides hope. It provides meaning, when you're in a situation where, again, there's some tension, or perhaps things are not always you're not going into a caregiving situation that is soft and already kind of prepared for interaction. The scripture that says, honor your mother and father, I always remind people, it says all the days of your life, not their life, all the days of your life, which means even after they're gone, we are to still honor our mother and father. All the days of my life. They're physically gone, but how am I going to continue to honor them? It's kind of what we talked about even with legacy. How am I going to continue to honor them? And I'm not even so much talking about planting a tree or creating some kind of foundation in their name. Just by how you live, how you treat others. And then just the endurance that faith and religion and Christianity or what have you plays in that role. Being able to literally have that strength, Cindy, the ability to keep going and endure, and not just endure the times, but I think Virginia mentioned to enjoy the times, reset, starting over again. And not necessarily just because there's tension, but because now there is a totally different life that this person is living from what they probably were living before. And the last thing they need reminded of is, or be made to think, is that it's not as good. Caring for people requires us to be able to reframe their world. Hey, I know you're not able to do this anymore, but what can we do now? And faith and our strength from the Lord gives us that ability. And many caregivers, obviously, we know, rely on prayer, scripture, church support, spiritual guidance. Those are very important areas. Very important areas. And let's move to the next slide. In terms of even biblical encouragement, those of us who are Bible readers, I want to leave just these 3 verses. Isaiah chapter 40, verse 29, he gives strength to the weary. He gives strength to the weary. I know people that don't even like to admit that they're weary, which is crazy. I'm like, well, why not? It doesn't take anything away from God. It's not as if once we admit that we're running low on energy, or perhaps are not at our best, that somehow makes him not as good of a God. He's God all by himself. He's going to still be God. We're weary. Matthew 11:28, come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden. And then what does he say? I will give you rest. But rest doesn't come to us. We have to go to it. We have to go to God. We have to go to what we know will actually provide us rest. I have a saying, we reap what we sow, not where we sow. A lot of times I'm giving in a place, but I'll receive from another place. I think that's important to remember so that we don't get caught up in thinking that where we sow is where we have to reap. Let's release people from suddenly having to then pour back into us where we're pouring into. Because a lot of times that doesn't happen. And there isn't a fairness of reciprocity or return. And then Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, Don't grow weary in well doing. We are going to be weary, but don't let that make you think what you're doing is not good. There's some things that are going to manifest far after your caregiving days are over, and you'll start to see the seeds that were planted, not so much in that person or in that time, but in you, in you, in you. That next slide, this is what I want to encourage you to as well, to do as well. And that is the soul, I call it soul care for caregivers. You have to prioritize personal prayer time. You have to prioritize a time for worship outside of Sunday morning. Sunday morning is 2 hours typically for most churches, in terms of even getting there, enjoying the service, hearing a good word, worship coming back. There's 168 other hours in the week. You have to prioritize your worship, prioritize your personal prayer time, and then quiet reflection. There's a monastic silence, right? That I believe monks and other some other religions practice. And I remember being at a Christian retreat with women one time, and they said, "We're going to do a monastic silent time right now," and I was like, "Oh, okay, I can be silent. That's not no big deal. I could do that." And they said the only thing you could have is like your watch and not even really your phone or anything like that. And it's like, okay. So I'm sitting there, I'm ready. I'm just like, Lord, I'm just listening to you. I hear you. Speak, Lord. I'm your servant. I'm listening. And some time went by and we did have a time limit. So I'm like, oh my goodness, I better get up and go because it's been so much time. And I looked down and it was like 1 minute and 7 seconds. And I was like, I'm not good at this. My life has been going at breakneck speed. If I thought that 1 minute and 7 seconds was 15 minutes, like it, am I alone here? Don't leave me out here. Has anyone ever tried to just quietly reflect? Turn off your phone, turn
all
off
the time.
Music.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not accustomed to just being still, it's hard. We're not in a world that even celebrates being still. We praise, hustle and grind and going and securing the bag and getting it done. There's very little time to even think, quiet reflection and being still. And when you are thinking about compassionate caregiving, you better employ that. You better be able to do that. I'm much better, Pastor Audrey. Don't laugh at me. I'm much better now. I'm getting better. I'll say that. But when I tell you, it felt like so long, Janine. It felt like it was like 10 minutes, and then I looked down and I'm like, a minute, 2-3 minutes. Like I couldn't believe it. I mean, I felt like I was like on the treadmill. Like every time I'm looking down at the treadmill, I'm like, is it been 30 minutes yet? It's been like 8 minutes. But when you really have to say, listen, I'm going to need some soul care for this caregiving that I'm doing. And then this is what I think that we should all do. Have a soul care plan. We have a plan for everything else. Meal preps, workout plans, IEPs and all these other things and educational plans. And we have 3-year plans and 5-year planners and where do you want to be in the next decade? And we better have a soul care plan. Roxanne, we better have something in place that says, you know what, once I'm done, or not even once I'm done, but as I'm taking care of elderly parents, as I'm ministering and being available to my spouse or what have you. And then there's that question, who is pouring into you as you pour into others? Who is pouring into you as you pour into others? What I have found is that thankfully over the past few years, I've been blessed with intergenerational relationships. I have a couple women that are in their 70s that are a little older than me that can pour into me because for one, they just have wisdom. They have some more miles on me. They have more miles on me and then more miles than I have. And so they're able to speak to things. They've been places that I haven't been before. And one in particular, I call her my baby boomer BFF. And she gives me the business. If everyone else is like, you're doing fine, she'll be the one to say, you need to sharpen up that. Everyone else is real fascinated by you, but I'm not. Maybe it's a boomer thing too. because they're going to tell you like it is. Everyone else is applauding. Oh, you're great. You're great. And she's like, hey, all right, you're great, but there's some things you need to make sure you pay attention to. And I love that. So who's pouring into you as you're pouring into others? And it may not necessarily be the person you think. It could be an unlikely person. It could be the least person or thing that you think would do that for you. You know, we don't want to say that caregiving is draining, but it is. And it comes with a set of different issues and burdens. So what are your fillers? You know, what are your fillers? And then understand your threshold. Take a break before you break. Take a break before you break. And don't take a break and then suddenly sleep all day. Now, I'm not against it, but I'm saying this. Take a break before you need to do a bunch of recovery days. Does that make sense? You know, if you have a break, then you should enjoy it. You should be able to say, okay, well, then I'm going to read a book or I'm going to go whatever, but not I'm catching up on sleep and I'm now having to, you know, that happens, but don't make that a habit. Let's go to the next page, and I'm just going to give you some practical self-care strategies that I think are very helpful. At least for me, I'm missing a lot of the chat here. Yeah. I love silent time. I could drive home with no music sometimes. I can too, Cindy. Now, I'm married to a New Yorker, and he loves all loud things all the time. Music, the whole thing. And sometimes I'm like, I don't need to hear anything. Have a soul care plan. You can go to, okay, listen. And then here's the thing. Soul care for caregivers includes practical self-care strategies. There's at least seven types of rest we all need. For one, set some boundaries, accept help. And here's the kicker. I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, but you have to actually schedule rest. It's not going to come just so easily. And it's not going to come when you need it. You have to schedule it. You have to schedule rest. I highly suggest you join a support group, get into a care circle, tap into Sister Theresa, tell her, listen, I'm struggling in this area. What resources do you have for this specific thing? Seek respite care. Although that, as Dr. Ernestine mentioned, we're not always included in the healthcare system as a necessary need, that there are resources for respite care. And sometimes you just have to step away. And if that immediate respite is not in your family, again, you can't call someone and say, hey, I need to go away for the weekend. Can you come or whatever? There are resources available. Different types of rest include physical rest, mental rest. There's my monastic thing there, sensory rest. You have to specifically say, I don't need to put anything else in my ear gate, eye gate. I need to just really rest. Creative rest, emotional rest. Creative rest is huge, especially if your actual full-time job requires you to be so cerebral, right? And then emotional rest, social rest, and spiritual rest. Absolutely spiritual rest. Let's go to one of the last slides, encouragement and affirmations. This is what I want to really remind you of. You're seen. You are valued. Your work matters. But here's my favorite one. Your worth matters. Your worth matters more than your work. And God cares for you too. As you're caring for other people, God cares for you too. He will take care of you. Like a mother tends to her child, God will take care of you. My sister often says, if you let him. My sister Mary, she's a pastor's wife too. She's like, there's all these promises and all these blessings and all these sacred things that we declare and decree all the time. But it's still, there's a condition there. If you let him, he will be rest if you let him. He will provide if you let him. He will shelter and comfort you if you let him. And there's no reason for any of us to be walking around with a big S for Superwoman on our chest at all. There's nothing honorific about a woman of God walking around looking depleted and crazy. And we're talking about, well, we're just doing this for the name of God and Jesus is all. No, that's not even a good witness to the world. It's really not. And we don't talk about it a lot, but it's not. There's no trophy for depleting ourselves and being doormats, or suddenly, not being a good representation or an ambassador for Christ. We want to be able to do this with a spirit of excellence that also says, I know my worth. I know my work matters, and I know that God has been taking care of me too. I pray this blessed you all. Again, if nothing else, I leave you with those 7 words. This is where I want to be. And I promise you, knowing the faces that I see, the people that I know personally, but also those that I don't, I promise you, you're exactly where God wants you to be. You are exactly where God wants you to be. If no one has told you, thank you for your work. Thank you for the sacrifice. Thank you for the strain that you've put in. Thank you for the strength that you exhibit. Thank you for how you're stepping up and being a light in your family, because your first ministry is your family. Real ministry starts behind the scenes. It often doesn't include accolades. It doesn't often include rewards and awards and things of that nature. It's the unseen things that we do for God, but with God. We are in partnership with him, and I pray that this blesses you. That last slide, I just want you to know I wasn't shooting from the hip. If you could put that up, Sister Theresa, I'm not only just an educator, I am a scholar, so I always like to make sure that people understand this was not done haphazardly. It was certainly done with preparation. Those are my citations there. I do like to include that because I think it's important, not just for ability, but for credibility. And I think that that's important too. These are some amazing resources that gave credit to the 63 million people that are caregivers, as well as all of the other statistics and numbers that we put up. Again, they're probably much higher now. The National Alliance for Caregiving, AARP, all the way down to Diverse Elders Coalition reports on African American caregiving, and so many others. So please do your homework as well, but also take care of your own home, your temple. Amen. God bless you. Thank you so much.